Okay, so network administration. So this is your subject, right? So earlier this has been done by Mr. Vijay. So this time, since he won't be able to, I will be conducting the lectures, right? So basically, what we will do. Okay, before starting, have any of you done any courses, or do you have any knowledge in say network administration? Have you done any courses, or so? Yes, anyone? You can raise your hand, and then you can. Have you done any like courses, or do you have any self-learning? You have done self-learning in this area. So it's like domain server, then domain administration. So this network administration includes those things, right? Managing switches, routers, then managing servers, clients, server client architects. So have any of you have done any courses, or have you self-learned? Any of you?
Yes, sir.
With this, you have done
Yes, sir. I followed some courses in Coursera, network administrator in
online.
yes, Google, and I followed some basic knowledge with my diploma program.
Okay. Have you done any practical? I
Mm,
mean, have you worked part time or that kind of?
no, no, sir.
No. Okay. You theory,
No. Yes, sir.
Okay.
In normal, I use my laptop and I do some works with my laptops only.
Okay. You mean like installing virtual OS and so on.
Yes, sir.
What about the others? Any of the others have any done any courses, or have you self-learned any of the others? Yes, I'm just asking because I want to know the background, right? If many of you have any some kind of knowledge, or you don't have any knowledge at all. So that is why I'm asking if you have any knowledge in this area. Okay, so seems only Vidyasun has some kind of knowledge in this area, right? Okay, right. So mainly we will be covering these areas, right? Um, you can clearly hear me, right?
Yes, sir. We
Okay,
can
okay,
clear hear
okay,
you, sir.
okay, no problem. Right now, so install, configure, maintain Windows-based client server platform. So like if you are like installing Windows to maybe your computer or your own computer or laptop, so that you can say as a client system, but actually, yeah, it's not this. I will explain, right? Um, so I hope you can all install Windows to your own laptop or Windows, right? So how many of you have done that? Can you raise your hand? How many of you have installed Windows on your own, your laptop or computer? Okay, only Vidyasul. Okay, tell me about. Right. So yes, we have a few people who have that kind of knowledge. Good, because it's better to have some kind of knowledge. At least in installing this Windows OS and whatever, right? So sometimes things happen, and then uh, if you have the knowledge, then it will be easy to recover rather than having to go to a friend. Uh, you might not be able to then recover quickly, right? If you don't have the your own knowledge. So so we so you have the internet now, right? So you can learn how to install and like basic things. So then if something goes wrong with your computer or laptop, then you can fix it yourself. Okay, so then perform user and domain resource management. So this is talking about domain server, the domain environment. I will explain later. So basically, domain environment means managing things centrally, right? In a central point. For example, let's say a lab, a computer lab in your university, right? So let's say there are 40, 50 computers. So if you have this domain environment, you can control all those computers in your lab centrally, right? Maintain maintain in one place, right? Okay, then monitor and tune system performance, then operating system security, internet connectivity, then hardware requirements. So these we will be mainly going through these things. Introduction to administrating accounts and resources, then managing user and computer accounts. Right? So this is creating user accounts, right? So there are two ways. So I will tell you later. You can create central accounts where it will work in every computer, or you can create local accounts where it will work in that particular computer, right? And then managing groups, managing access to resources. This is security, right? You can group and then you can put security. Okay. Then implementing and managing printing. Then managing access to objects in organization limits. This is what we are talking about domain server, right? This organization limits is in the Active Directory. Yeah. So this what I'm saying maybe like Greek to you now, but so when you learn, you will know all those things, right? Implementing group policy, that is also related to domain environment. Then implementing administrative templates and audit policy. This is all these are security, related to security, right? Then preparing to administer server. So maintaining a server. Then monitoring server performance. Managing data storage. Introduction to disaster recovery. Disaster recovery means let's say your server goes down, right? So you should have backup so that you can recover quickly. Right. Then maintaining software by using software update services. So Windows updates you can push using this software update service, which is a tool in Windows, right? You can from one point you can push the updates to all the computers in the labs, right? Then troubleshooting boot position other system issues. Then configuring TCP IP addressing and name the solution. So TCP IP addressing means putting IP address, subnet mask, gateway, and so on. Name resolution, that is converting name to IP address. We will learn about those things. Then supporting remote users, right? So remotely login and things like that. So especially these days, with the COVID situation, uh, we need to have this remote access, right? So otherwise, it is difficult because you know in the work from home environment, we should have remote access, right? Then mobile operating system and application. Okay, so these this is not the. I will later tell you the percentages, right? Okay, so that is just the content. So introduction to network administration. Right. So we will learn this about workstation servers, the network management, how to manage the network. Okay, so workstations. What is this workstation? So it's the computer you are using, right, to run application, and it's connected to server from right. Okay. Uh, so it can be connected to server uh, where you can share data and so on, right? Share files, or maybe you can share files with another computer directly without the server. Okay, then server. So workstation is actually a client machine or computer which you are actually using. You will be using the client machine or workstation, right? So then the server. So server is a different thing. You will not be directly using a server, right? The server will be usually in a server room, right, or in some kind of room, isolated, right? It can be sometimes in the computer lab as well, but you will not be directly using a server, right? That is, you will not be, typing using a keyboard and mouse and directly using a server. You will be using a workstation or a client computer, right? So server is a machine which gives services to others. Right? So examples given here, you might have heard this: web server, file server, domain server, email server. Right? So web server is a server which gives web service. Right? For example, let's say you are typing yahoo.com, right? So you get a Yahoo page. So that page comes from the Yahoo web server, right? So there is a special server, or can say it's a computer, right? It's a powerful computer. So where the pages, images, videos, whatever are stored, right? So when you access that website, right, actually what is happening is you will be accessing content in that web server, right? Because web server is giving the service to you, right? The client. So you are the client, and the server is the service provider. You can say, right? Then if you take file server, that is a server which files can be kept. For example, let's say maybe some documents, right? Publicly shared documents, or uh, let's say it can be anything, right? Music or video, maybe video lessons. So those kind of things can be shared using a file server, right? So you can access all these files from a client, and then using this file server. Then domain server. So we will later learn about that. Actually, so it's It's like grouping, right? So let's take a computer lab in your university, right? So you group one lab and then you manage that all the computers in the lab by using a domain server, right? So the server is the one who is maintaining all the computers in the lab, right? So it gives services like you can have your own special folder in the server, right, for your account, login account. And if you are logging into a domain server, so using your account, you can access or you can log in your account from any computer in the lab, right, which is connected to that domain. So if you don't have this kind of domain login, then you can access only uh, one computer in the lab if there are local accounts. If you have a common account in all the computers, then you can access any computer with that common account. But in a domain environment, you will have a unique account, maybe using your ID number or name, right? So that unique account you can access using any computer in the lab, right? So that is the domain server. So it gives domain service to all the clients. Then email server you can think, right. So you are using maybe Google, Gmail, or Yahoo, or any other email, or Outlook. So for the emails, there's a specific server which is allocated, right? Your inbox messages and whatever those are in that email server, right? So when you are accessing maybe Gmail or Yahoo, you will be accessing this email server, right? So this server, it has to be online, right? Powered on and connected to the internet, right? If it goes down for some reason, then you will not be able to access your email, right? So sometimes it can happen, maybe because virus attack, or um, due to power outage, right? Uh, or some kind of disaster, right? Usually, we don't see those big like Gmail, Yahoo going down, but rarely you see that because there is backup, right? So even one goes down, there is usually a recovery server somewhere, right? Usually not in the same country, but in some other country, right? Or it can be in the same country somewhere else, not the same place. So that is what we call disaster recovery. So sometimes Gmail or Yahoo can go down due to an attack, right? Maybe virus attack or DOS attack, right? So usually those are the kind of, and those attacks should be a very big one, right? Otherwise, because there are backups also. So usually those big email servers, they don't go down, right? Okay. So the server is a special. Okay, I will show some pictures also. So server is also a computer, but it's a special one. It is a more powerful one, and the server is built to run 24/7, right? 365. So the server, you usually keep it on. You never turn off the server, right? Because it's meant to provide a service. So you always keep the servers on, right? And so the hardware and everything, they have specially built in those servers. So it has the same kind of inside. It has almost the same kind of things which you find in a computer. right? These servers. There's a motherboard, CPU, RAM, hard disk, right? So the only difference is all those components are being made top quality so that they can run, keep on the whole time, right? Because without failure, if you need to keep the systems on the whole day, right, and throughout the year, right, so then it has to be quality components, right, electronic components. So especially the motherboard, right, and then the CPU, RAM, everything, right? They should be made to withstand that stress, right? Because keeping it on the whole time, uh, it is it will be stressful for the components, right? Electronic components. So that is the difference between a server and a normal computer. But inside, mostly the same things are there. But there are some, advanced things in the server, right? Rather than a desktop computer. For example, uh, so what you see here now, on your left hand side, what you see is uh, here, what you see in front here are hard disks, right? So it's removable. So what you see in your right side is a normal, what you call it, server tower, right? Tower type of server, which is kept vertical, right? And here at the bottom, what you see is a horizontal one, right? Which can be mounted to the server rack. So I will show you what are those, right? So this tower computer actually, it's like your normal computer casing, right? That is why we call it the tower. So usually this is not rack mountable, right? So I will show you what this rack is. So there are two types. The tower type servers. So they are big, consume more power, and they have consume more space also, right? Because it is big and it's not rack mountable, so you will have to keep it in this position, right? So if you take the rack mountable servers, right? So this is one of the rack mountable servers. So on the left and right side, you see a railing, right? So this will be mounted to a cabinet. You know, uh, it can be mounted to a cabinet
Yes, sir.
server rack. We call, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, මේ සර්ගේ පැත්තෙන් ලොකු noise එකක් එනවා ඇහෙනවා මදි අපිට.
This server, this horizontal one, we call it a rack mountable server. And then to a cabinet. So there are so there's a railing fixed to the cabinet, and then through that railing you can pull the server out and push it in, right? So it is very easy to manage, and it takes less amount of space in the server rack also, right? So usually we don't now computer, you just this tower one, you just keep it, maybe you can keep it on the ground or computer table, right? But servers in a server room, there are a lot of servers, right? So usually it's been put into server rack, right? And then here on the left side, so I told you that these are removable hard disks, right? So this is a disk array, we call it, right? So this is it's like this for maintenance purpose, right? If one of these hard disks go down, that is they stop working, you can immediately remove from the front, right? You don't now your computer or this tower you cannot immediately remove, right? You have to remove the computer casing and then get to the hard disk. And so your normal computer, it's very difficult. You have to remove, both these sides of the casing, right, left and right, and then remove the nails and so on, right? It's very difficult to remove. But so anyway, today there are new types of computer casings, gaming PCs, or there are some casings which are toolless, you call it, right? Toolless casings, which you don't have to use those nails to mount the hard disk. You can just use some clips and then mount to the casing, right? So that technology was there in the servers long time ago, but now it's coming to the normal computer casings as well, but they are expensive, right? If you buy a normal casing, less than like say 10,000, right? Yeah, the 10,000 range, you get a normal casing, which it's very difficult to remove hard disks quickly, right? You have to remove the casing and so on. Here you can just pull some lever here and then pull it out, right? And then you can install a new hard disk, and you don't have to turn off, right? That's the best thing here. You don't have to turn off this device. So online you can plug out and plug in again, right? So that is therefore efficiency, right? As I said, you cannot turn off servers and you cannot turn off hard disks, right? Because when you are working, you have to keep them working, right? So I will explain. So now, even if one hard disk goes out, there's a thing called RAID, right? Technology, where you can duplicate, right? So one hard disk going down does not destroy your data, right? So you can maybe have, let's say these two, right? You can have these two as a RAID 1, that is mirroring, called mirroring. So whatever data is in one hard disk is copied to the other, or mirrored to the other disk. So if one goes down, we have all the data in the other disk. So mirroring happens underneath, right? That is, you don't have to manually do anything, or use any software or anything, right? It's done directly by the hardware. So RAID support is definitely there in the servers, but not usually in your computers, right? So the server motherboards, they support this RAID technology. You can maybe install a separate RAID card or things like that, right? So that is a bit about the servers. So this you can see there is some kind of a casing, right? So this is also a rack mountable, right? It can be installed in the rack, and when you want, you can pull it out, and it's very easy, right? Okay, this is another server, right? These are all Dell servers, right? Yes, this is also Dell server. It's PowerEdge, I think R550 or something, right? So here also, it's this picture is much clearer than the previous one. So here on the two sides are the locks. You can see this this bottom part, right? when you push into the server rack, it will lock to the server rack, right? Where you cannot just pull it. So you have to release this lock to take out the server, right? So you don't usually need to take out the server unless for maintenance purpose, right? Right. So what you see here are 8 disks, right? So can you see now there's a light to every one of these disks, right? So those change in color when the disks go bad, right? So it will indicate. So when you just have a look in the front, you can identify which hard disks are good and which are not good, right? And then you can replace. So usually there's some kind of button or lever here which you can push or pull and to remove, right? So you should never remove a hard disk when it is working. I mean, what I mean is a working hard disk, right? So if for some reason it stops working, then you can pull it out, no issue. But otherwise, you should never pull out a hard disk, right? The reason is now if you are using this RAID technology, so there are all these this should be in working condition, right? You cannot pull it out when they are working. Then it will become corrupted, right? So if you want to remove, then you have to power down the server and remove, right? Otherwise, you should not remove them when they are online, right? And then if you are using this, what I call this RAID technology, right? So let's say you power down and remove these disks, right? Now there is an order here of the disks, right? So if you pull out, let's say all the disks, and then when you put in, you don't put it to the proper order, then also there will be a problem, right? It will become corrupted. So you have to be very careful when you are using this RAID technology. So you can see normally in servers, you get a VGA port in front, right? It might not be there in every server, but usually you get, and usually 2 USB ports, 2 or 1, right? And these CD-ROM devices or DVD-ROMs, you get like the laptop ones, right? Because these servers need to be, the size needs to be very small, right? A certain standard size, right? So you can't put the normal, desktop CD-ROMs here, then it will take up more space, right? So now there is a, okay, this is a 2U, yeah, I think this is a 2U server. So 1U, 2U, so like that. I think this is also a 2U server. So the height, there's a certain standard when we come to server racks, right? We have 1U, 2U, 3U, 4U, like that, right? So the bigger the height, the number of the U is more, right? So 1U is a standard switch. Okay, so this, yeah, this is a server room with a lot of racks. Okay, it says here server rack versus network rack. So that is, okay, usually difference means actually a rack is, it's a rack, right? So you can see it's all are almost the same, right? So each of these are cabinets, network cabinets, or server racks. So in a server rack, we usually put the servers, right? Yeah, I think this one, yeah, this one also servers. This is also servers. So in some racks, we can put switches only, right? So then we call it a network rack. Then we call a rack with servers as a server rack, right? But usually you can see the rack is almost the same, right? It's a cabinet. It's a standard size, right? So the width of the rack, as you can see here, it's standard size, right? With the height can be different. Height of the rack can be different. We can say these are, I think, around 40U or 42U, something like that, right? So can you see one of these switches or these units? This is one. So if you take one of these, right, one unit, this is called 1U, right? So you add up and you get how many use this rack is. So I think this is close to 40, 42U something, right? So you can put up to that amount of devices in say 40U, then you can put up to that amount of devices, right? If you put closely like this, if you install very closely, sometimes you have to have some kind of distance like this, maybe to run cables. Here at the bottom, you can see some cables, right? So sometimes you might have to have some room for putting the cables. Then you can't fix like this, right? So yeah, there are smaller ones also, right? This is a network cabinet which is fixed to the wall, right? So there are many. This is, I think, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10U or 12U, this one, right? So already two switches are connected here. I think this is 10U, right? So here, if you take one switch, this height is the normal 1U size, right? If you take one switch, this is 1U, right? So then you add up, and the modern these cabinets, the numbers are put here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Yeah, so here just connected two switches, right? So you have to use short cables also here, right? Otherwise there will be no room to put the cables when you have to close this lid, right? So you have to put smaller cables here when connecting. So yeah, this is a server rack. I think the height is less than what I showed earlier, but there are different heights. Okay, so this is a 40U, 42U server rack, right? So you can see the height, right? So 19 inches, that is the width. I told you it's a standard size. The reason these are standard is because servers, rack mounted servers and switches, rack mounted switches are built to that size, standard size, right? So if you don't have a standard size rack, then you cannot fix, right? So, and this okay, so the height is 42U, that doesn't matter, but this width is a standard width, 19 inch, right? Usually they when you buy, they have mentioned this width as well, 19-inch, right? And this depth, the depth of the cabinet also, there are two types, right? If you are installing just switches like this, right, then you don't need because the switches, they are not very long, right? At the, I mean, the width of the, not the width, the length of the to the back, right, the size, they are small, right? So if you are using a server rack to install switches only, right, this this depth, you can get a smaller one. But if you are installing servers will be, the depth is quite big, right? If you take a I will show you. This is also a normal cabinet. Yeah, it has wheels also. So the height, it can be different, right? You can get a smaller one or you can get a big one. If you are going to put a lot of servers or switches, then you can get a, you know, high one like this. The side panels also can be removed, right? You can see here there are two covers here. Sometimes this will be one panel you have to remove, then it will be a bit heavy, right? So you can remove these covers to make the installation of, you know, hard disk, servers or switches easy, right? But you normally keep this closed, the side panels, right? So even in this, you can see the side panel can be removed, both sides, right? So, okay, this is image of a, okay, blade server. Right, these blade servers, yeah, you have, you know, like smaller servers as well, like this nowadays, right? So these are separate server units. You don't get all the parts in here, right? You might get the CPU, RAM, hard disks will not be included in this server, right? It will be separate. That is why this server unit is small. So, you know, when you go to virtual servers, you have to have some a set of physical servers like this, right? Then when a server goes down, you can, you know, remove like a hard disk, right? So this is bigger than a hard disk. You can see it's a small server unit, right? So there can be several server units where you can create a virtual server. You might have heard of these words, virtual server. So if you take one server unit, there can be more than one OS running in the as a virtual server, right? If you take one physical server, there can be 2, 3, 4 virtual servers running in the same server, right? That is how it is used nowadays, because it, you know, saves a lot of because from one device, if you can run like 4 OS, right, or virtual servers, right, we call them virtual servers because it's virtual, right? So using one physical server, we can run more than one virtual server, right? Then we have tools to manage those virtual servers and so on, right? So this is also called as a blade server. And then if you look at this image, right, so this is the railing I told you about, right? So this is a 1U server, right? You can see the size or height is very small in this server, right? So yeah, these are sometimes also called blade servers, right? So they take less amount of space in the rack, but you know, when the server is small, right? The fans are also will be small, right? Then it will be a lot of noise when the fans are running, right? Because small fans running at high speed, it makes noise, right? So when the server is bigger and the fan size is also big, then, okay, you know the theory, right? When the fan size becomes bigger, you don't have to rotate the fan at a higher speed to get the volume of air. In a small fan, to get the same volume of air through the devices, we have to run it at a high speed, right? But if you take a large fan, then it can be run at a slow speed, but the same amount of air will be passing through the components, right? And it will be much cooler and quieter, right? So if you take this kind of smaller servers, it will be definitely noisy, right? So yeah, say so you see a lot of racks here. These are it seems to be open racks because they are not closed. Right? Usually, yeah. So the sides are open. So these are open racks. So there are various types of racks, right? So this is an open rack. Yeah, you can see the sides and front all are open, right? So yeah, so these are okay, it's not clear there. Yeah, these should be closed racks. No, they seem to be open as well. Okay, so you see a lot of so if you take, for example, like Facebook or Google, they have server farms like this. We call server farms because they will have a lot of servers in a large area like this, right? So otherwise, how do they have the amount of data? So the whole world is using those servers, right? So there are a lot of servers like server farm in, for example, Facebook or Google, right? Yeah. So this is basically yeah, the sizes 4U, 8U, and 24U. So those are server racks, and I showed you how servers are put into the racks, right? Yeah, these are open server racks. You can see, right? All the sides are open, right? But it's a bit messy, I mean, you cannot close this and it's all open, right? And no security here also. If you take this open server rack, anyone can remove and take this, right? Because you cannot lock unless you lock the room. So the server rack you can lock, so then no one will be able to remove or turn off or whatever, right? Once you lock the server rack. So usually in a server room, yeah, so you see there are a lot of servers here, and you can pull out one of those servers like this out when you need, right? So usually for maintenance purpose, right? Maybe you need to install some kind of card or hard disk, or maybe to clean up the inside. Okay, and then nowadays Okay, earlier actually, if you take a server rack, right, you cool the room which has the server racks, right, using AC. So actually the AC has to, you know, cool the whole room. So it's not very efficient, right? So these racks, the servers will put out the hot air from the back, right? So usually the server rack, cool air is taken from the front, right? And then hot air is put out of the server rack to the back, right? And then if you have AC in the room, then it will cool the whole room, right? Plus these server racks as well. But now we have efficient way, right? Where the AC unit is directly connected to the server racks, right? It's directly cooling the server racks only, right? So we can, it's very efficient, and you know, the power needed is only to cool the server racks, right? Not the room. So these are expensive than, you know, having the normal racks and AC. These are specialized racks with the AC unit coming to the server rack unit directly, right? The cold air will circulate inside these racks, right? As you can see here. So same sort of principle, cool air will be taken from the front, and then hot air will be blown to the back, right? Okay. Yeah, there are different types of server racks where, you know, there's a door you can open. Some you have a single door, and some you have two doors, right? So right, so these are all directly cooling the racks. It's very efficient, and you know, you can keep the server racks much cooler this way, because if you are cooling the room, right, it takes time, because you have to cool the room also, and you need a big capacity of air conditioning unit also, because the size of the room plus the server rack. So this, when you have a lot of servers, it will be very hot, right? So you have to have backup ACs and so on, because if the AC goes down, then you have a problem, right? Because ACs they usually go down, right? You have to maintain them properly. Okay, do you have any questions in what I said, explained just now? So these are some examples of server racks. Here you can see, yeah, there is a space kept in the middle, right? If you are putting, you know, these servers or switches very close by, the problem will be the cooling, right? If there is less space between the servers, the air, if there is, because air cannot go through if they are very close, right? So then the cooling will be less efficient unless you have a good AC. So this is related to networking, this rack, right? You can see a lot of cables. You have these fiber cables also, right? And you have these Cat5 copper cables. So this is actually properly organized. You can see the cables are very in a clean manner, right? So this is how it should be. See, even a lot of cables, but this is easy to troubleshoot. If there is any issue, you can trace whatever the cables, what is this cable connected to where, and so on, right? See, so this is the proper way of connecting the switches and cables, right? This is a cable management arm, what you see here, right? The cables are clipped so that they don't go here and there, right? Right. So some examples of proper cabling, right? Now, yeah, this is a bit untidy, but still there is some kind of, just look at a lot of cables, but very tidy, right? See, if you, now this is not in a proper manner, right? So if you have cables like this, then it is very difficult to manage. You can't find which cable goes where and so on. It takes time, and so it's better to have cabling in a proper manner. Yeah, this is another example. So you should not have cables like this, right? This is this usually happens when you just plug in cables when you need. You are not putting them into a proper order, and so this is very difficult to manage. Okay, so that's about cable racks. So these are the insides of a normal server. You have the Xeon processor. Usually in servers, this Xeon is made for servers, right? You don't find this in the normal your desktop PCs, right? You have maybe the Pentium or i3, i4, sorry, i5, i7, i9 now we have. So those are desktop processors. This is a server processor. They are specially made for servers, for the high amount of load and 24/7 availability, right? And then drive base. So internal hard drive bay and hot plug backplane. So there can be internal drives which is inside the server, which will be a bit hard to remove quickly, right? And hot plug backplane, those are the ones which can be removed from the front just by pulling out, right? So this is just an example, right? So up to 16 2.5 HAD SAS. Okay, so 16 2.5 means the laptop hard disk size. So if you are using this laptop type hard disk in a server, then you can have a lot of these hard disks, right? Because it saves the space of the server by using the smaller type of hard disk, right? Yeah, and SSD also is available. And up to 8 3.5, that is the normal hard disk, desktop hard disk. That is also it can be available, right? This will depend on the server model. And then memory. So as you know, normal desktop PCs, you have like maximum like 4 RAM ports, right? Usually you don't get more than 4 ports unless it's a special type of motherboard, right? I'm talking about a normal desktop board. So in a server, as you can see, so in this one there are 24 RAM slots, right? Because the server needs a lot of memory, so you will need to have a lot of these RAM slots, so you can plug in. And so here up to 1.5 terabyte of RAM can be used in this server, right? And then ECC memory, that is ECC is a special ability of the RAM where it has error correction ability, right? Any errors in the RAM, it can correct. Then hot plug hard drives are removable hard drives which you can unplug from the front. Then hot plug redundant cooling. Okay, now the new servers, some of them have the fans, also the fan units of the servers. You can, when the power is on, you can remove, right? Let's say a fan fails. You can unplug the fan from the server and then plug in a new unit. So some servers have that kind of feature. I think not some servers nowadays. I think most of the servers are having this hot plug, means you can remove when they are online, right? You don't have to turn the server off. So hot plug means you can remove while the server is powered on. And then hot plug redundant power. Again, so there is more than one power supply in these servers. Let me show you that as well. So that, if one power supply fails, the other backup power supply will take over. Okay, this is one example. Right, this is actually a tower server. So the power supply is a big one, right? As you can see. So there are two power supplies, right? Both you give power. Now, if one of these fail, right, the other will automatically take over, right? You don't have to switch or anything. It will automatically, if one fails, it will not turn the server off, right? The server will be on. Now, these are hot plug removable. That means these can be removed when the power is on in the server, right? So as I told you, the servers, we do not power off, right? Because they provide a service and continuous service. So we have to keep them on all the time, right? So if, so there's a light here. So either the light will not turn on here, or there's, I think, a red light here as well. If something is wrong with the power supply and it's not working properly, it will show red, or there will be no lights at all. And it will be indicated usually from the front also, right? Now these servers are very advanced. They have indicators showing, okay, this has failed, right? Usually in the front. So you can from the front you can see, right? If you have any errors in the, is it the CPU, RAM, or the power supply, right? You usually have some kind of indicator in the front. In the servers, these are there, right? Because you always need to, because they should be on all the time, and you have to make sure that they stay on, right? So any issues you identify, and then you quickly recover them, right? You can remove the non-working units, and then you can replace with the new units, right?
සර් එතකොට මේ පවර් සප්ලයි දෙකම එකවර වැඩ කරගෙන තියෙන්නේ එකෙන්
ඔව්
දෙකෙන්
ඔව් ඔව්. ඔව් වැඩ කරනවා. දෙකම එකපාර වැඩ කරනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි. ඒකේ පවර් එක දෙකටම දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඇතුලේ එතකොට සර්කිට් එකෙන් දෙකෙන්ම පවර් ගන්නවා. එකක් ෆේල් වුණොත් ඉෂුව එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ, ස්විච් වෙන එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. දෙකෙන්ම පවර් ගන්නවා. එකක් ෆේල් වුණොත් ඉතුරු එකෙන් පවර් දෙකටම ගන්නවා. ඕෆ් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So this is normally, and even if you remove one when online, no issue, the other will take over, right? So having two power supplies, there are two advantages. One is if a power supply fails, the other one, there is the other one to take over, right? No problem there. Then we can put two power sources here, right? For example, we can put one power supply, connect one power supply to a UPS and the other one to the direct power, right? So if direct power fails, then the UPS power will be there, right? Or if the UPS fails, then the direct power will be there. Or we can connect these two to two UPS systems, right? Because we have to think of everything when we are coming to these servers, right? Redundancy. So UPS also can fail, right? Maybe due to battery problems or motherboard or whatever, right? Or maybe something happened in the UPS and then the line tripped, right? These things happen. So even if we have UPS, usually the output of the UPS also there's a trip, right? So if something happens, short or something, then it might turn, the trip might go off, and then even if you have a UPS, there's no use, right? Because if the trip goes off, then you don't have power, right, to the whatever the components connected. So having that kind of redundancy will help. So this is another example. Yeah, so the size of the power supplies will be depend on the server type, right? Can have, these are two power supplies, right? Okay, this is something, I think one unit, but there are two power supplies inside, right? You can remove when one of them is not working. Yeah, this is one kind of power supply unit which will be plugged into the server, right? There can be two or more of these in a server. If we have a bigger kind of server, yeah, you can see here there are two power supplies in this server. So minimum there is at least two power supplies in the server, right? So this is normally this is what a power supply module looks like, right? So this is the back side, and on the other side there is a connector, right, which will plug into the server, right? So when you remove, that connector will get removed and disconnect from the server. And there is also, you can see a kind of a metal lock switch here. So when the power cable is plugged, right, this will lock the power supply unit to the server. So you cannot remove a power supply unit when the power is plugged in, right? You have to remove the power cord to so it's there in every module. As you can see here, there's a mechanical switch. When you plug in the power cord here, this switch will lock this unit to the server, right? So you cannot remove this power supply module when the power is power cord is plugged here, right? You have to first remove the power cord, and then only you can remove this module from the server. So in some servers, there can be like, you know, four redundant power supplies. Yeah, like in this one, there are three. So the more power supplies you have, the more redundancy you can have. Right, now this is the other side of the power supply unit where there is a connector which will be plugged into the server side, right? And another thing is in some power supply units, there is this Velcro cable where, you know, you can neatly wrap the power cable so that it will not get removed, right? You can put the power cable, you can wrap the power cable with this Velcro cable so that it will not remove. Right, so that is the redundant power supplies. Right, okay, any questions regarding that? So can you see now in servers, there are a lot of technology available. So to make sure that, you know, those servers are kept on. Okay, let's see if I can show you the okay, this is yeah, so I told you that from the front of the server you can see the if any have failed, right? So this is one example here. Right, you can see there are several lights. So 1 to 6 are LED lights. So description is given here. So one is power supply fail. So they can be green and then turn red when there's a problem, right? So if any of the power supply fails, this will be red or blinking, or it will be depend on the server, right? But anyway, you can usually it will turn to red, I think, because when you see something red, then you look at it, right? So here you can see 2 is alert, so some kind of error. Then 3 is for the network card. So if the network is working, it will blink or have green color, something, right? So there are 2 network cards, so it will be shown from the front. You don't have to go to the back. And then 5 is the hard disk light, and 6 is the power. Yeah, this is a simple one. There are advanced ones also, right? So basically that will be how usually in a server you have some kind of light in the front, right? So if let's say there are 2 power supplies and one fail, this will indicate in the front saying one has failed, right? Then you can go to the back and check. So usually new ones, there is a bigger panel than this, right? Where it will show you, let's say if there is a RAM error, all those information it will show. Yeah, sometimes even in the motherboard you can have that kind of yeah, okay. Yeah, if I find one of those panels, I will show you, right? I can't find one now. Anyway.
So ඕක වෙනස් වෙනවද මැනුෆැක්චරර් අනුව?
වෙනස් වෙනවා. මොකද මේ එක එක manufacturers ලා එක එක විදිහට හදන්නේ. So whatever the panels and indicators will be different, right? But usually, for the main things, those lights will be there. Maybe for the power, then the CPU, RAM, then network, hard disk, basic, the main things will be there, right? They are usually, and fans also. Yes, in newer servers, fan failures also it will be indicated, so that because you cannot see if the fan is failed, right? Because it might be inside. So an indicator from the front, and then you can, and the servers you don't remove frequently, right? To check, because they are turned on and you don't turn them off. So definitely there should be some kind of indicator, right, to show you that there's some kind of fault. So usually in every server, some kind of error indicating light is there, right? And also, yeah, there's also a light usually in the servers where you can push a button from the front, and then it will be blue color light, right? So that light will be at the back as well. The reason for that is, if there are, say, a lot of same type of servers, for example, yeah, now let's say these three servers look exactly the same. Even if you check from the back, let's say there are 4, 5, 6 servers, or maybe more, right? Same type of servers. Now, if you want to troubleshoot one kind of server from the back, then when you go to the back, you don't know which one, right? If you want to check, let's say this middle one. So when you go to the backside, since all the servers look the same, it's difficult to identify. So there's usually a button here in the front where when you push, it will have a blue color light in the front and also at the back, right? So you just push the button, and when you go to the back, you can see the blue color. Then you know which server you want to troubleshoot. So that feature is there as well, usually in servers. Yeah, I cannot show you one here. Okay, anyway, so those are the basic features, and they will be there in every server, right? Okay, then network controller. So there can be more than, usually in servers, you get like maybe 2 network ports or maybe 4, right? Depending on the model. Maybe it's on board, directly connected to the motherboard, or maybe plugged in cards, right? So because this is a server, you need a lot of bandwidth, network bandwidth, right? For whatever services you are going to provide. So that is why there is more than one network card, so that you can extend or increase the bandwidth. Then you have RAID controllers, as I said. So RAID is used to increase the efficiency and backup of the hard disk. And if you have mirroring, then you can have one copy of one hard disk in another, right? So that if one goes down, the other one is there. And then you have thing called stripping. Okay, there are several types of so two types, right? One is mirroring and the other one is stripping. So stripping means, let's say 1 gigabyte, let's say 2 gigabyte file. There's 2 gigabyte file. So that file is broken into two and then put into this hard disk as 1 gigabyte. So the two parts of the file are in two hard disks, right? Then when you read that file, that 2 gigabyte file, so 1 gigabyte in each hard disk, right? So the access time or read time will be faster because you are using two hard disks, right? Rather than using one. So you can quickly read that file by using two hard disks because the access time will be doubled now due to two hard disks. So this is called stripping. So if you remove these disks separately and then try to read the file, it won't work. Why? Because the two parts are in two hard disks, and so you don't know how to join them, right? So the RAID card in the server will know where the parts are and how to join and read them, right? So this is one technology called stripping. It will increase the speed, access speed, right? Read and write both. Because even when you are writing, so two parts will be written to two disks. So it will increase the speed there also. The only thing here is, now if one of these gets damaged, then you have a problem, right? You cannot like manually read from the other part also, because there are two parts and one of those parts should be available, right? So that problem is there. This is what I call earlier. RAID 1 is mirroring. That is mirror of one hard disk. It's always there in another hard disk. So if one goes down, a mirror copy is there, so you can directly access from the mirror. No issue, right? So we have some other technologies also. So here, RAID 10 or RAID 1 plus 0, both are used. Both the technologies, mirror and stripping, are used here, right? So you can see here there are 4 hard disks. So so a couple has been stripped like this, 2 hard disks stripping, and the other 2 hard disks also stripped, but one strip is a mirror of the other, right? So if one hard disk fails here, no issue. The mirror of this whole stripping part is also here, right? So if one disk fails, you remove it and replace, then from the other part you can access and recover, right? Okay, shall we take a 15-minute break?
Okay, sir.
So we can start around 10:55.
සාර මේ රේඩ් එකේ ස්ට්‍රිපින් එකේදී දැන් අර බ්ලොක් දෙකක් නේ යන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ එක හાર્ඩ් එක එක බ්ලොක් එකක් අනිත් හાર્ඩ් එකේ අනිත් බ්ලොක් එකනේ යන්නේ.
ඔව්.
ඒකට බැරි වෙලා හරි ඩිස්ක් 1 එක මේ ෆේල් වුණොත් එහෙම
ඒතර ගන්න බෑ.
ඒකට ගන්න බෑ නේද?
ගන්න බෑ. තව ක්‍රමයක් තියෙනවා. ඒකට බෑකප් තව තියෙනවා parity. stripping with parity කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකෙදී parity bit එකක් වෙනම දාගෙන ඉන්නවා වෙනම disk එක. එතකොට එක disk එකක් fail වුණොත් recover කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මේකෙදි බෑ. මේ stripping විතරක් එකෙදි බෑ.
හරි සර්.
Okay, you can take a break and come 15 minutes.
හරි එතකොට RAID 0 එකේ RAID කියලා කියන්නේ redundant area of independent disks. ඒක තමයි RAID කියන එක තේරුම, right? So RAID 0 stripping, there is no recovery here. So if one disk fails, data is gone, right? So there is no way to recover the data. There is, okay. Have you heard about NAS? Anyone? NAS? අහන්නද? මොකක්ද NAS
කියන
කියන්නේ?
එක ඇහෙනවා මදුෂ.
අපි පොඩි try එකක් දෙමු සර් අපුවට හදාගන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ සර් අහන එක හෙන්නේ නැති නේද එකපාරට. සර්
දැන් ඇහෙනවද? දැන් ඇහෙනවද?
හරි.
හරි. NAS කියන එක අහලා තියෙනවද? NAS කියන එකක් අහලා නැහැ නේද කවුරු?
NAS කියන්නේ සර් network attached storage කියන එකද?
අන්න හරි. එතකොට මේ NAS කියන එකෙත් මේ ටෙක්නොලොජි එක යූස් වෙනවා. RAID ටෙක්නොලොජි එක හරිය නැත්නම් තව එකක් තියෙනවා මෙන්න මෙහෙම එකක් තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ NAS එකක් යූස් කරලා තියෙනවා නම් settings එක බලුවත් තියෙනවා. So you can select whether you use the RAID technology or this JBOD. So JBOD means just a bunch of disks. So it is usually JBOD is there in the NAS device, right? Not used. This is not used in servers, right? So in this also JBOD, this will work as one disk. All this disks will work as one disk, but if one fails, then of course there is no recovery, right? Let's say you have two, let's say 40 GB hard disk. So if you use this JBOD, it will show you as a 80 GB hard disk, right? One hard disk. So it will add all the hard disks you have, and it will work as show you as one hard disk, but actually it's two hard disks. But the thing is, if one fails, then you won't have any, you can't even boot, right, in the NAS, because usually the NAS, the bootable, everything is there in the hard disk. So if it fails, you won't even boot, right? That problem is there. So if you use the NAS as a, let's say, RAID 0, so let's say you can use two hard disks in a NAS device, and then you use one as a mirror, right? So RAID 1, right? So that's RAID 1. If one hard disk fails, then you're okay. You have the data, but the issue is you have only the capacity of one hard disk. That is the only issue, right? Your full capacity will be, let's say if you have two 40 GB hard disks, then your capacity is 40 GB only, right? You can't go to 80 GB. So JBOD, you can use the full capacity of all the hard disks available, but if one fails, then you don't have anything, right? So this is also like a RAID technology, but it's a simple one, right? Only for the NAS devices, right? This JBOD. Okay. Yeah, this is how they have simply put this JBOD, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So the data is put like this. So if all are working, then no problem. But If one of these disks fails, then there's an issue, right? Yeah, so just a bunch of this, obviously known as spanning, and array of hard disks need to appear single disk, right? So if you have 5 disks in your NAS, so it will show to you as one hard disk with the full capacity of the addition of all the hard disks available, right? Yeah, so there is no RAID level implementation, which results in lack of fault tolerance. So if one fails, then all is gone. So remember this if you are using a NAS device, right? When you are using RAID, mirror is good, but you have half the capacity, but its recovery is there, right? If one hard disk fails, then you still have the data, right, in the other hard disk. If both hard disks fail, of course, then you won't have any data. But usually that doesn't happen, right? Both hard disks usually don't fail. But in a rare case, if that happens, you are done, right? Okay. Right. Let's go back to the RAID technology. Right. So here there's a RAID 5. So RAID 5 is stripping with parity, right? So yeah. So here is an example. So data is okay. So you can see A1, A2, A3, right? So part of A is in 3 disks, and then the fourth disk, the parity of A is stored, right? So let's say this fails, this disk 3, right? So because parity disk is we have still, so we can recover this A from this parity. Then if we take B, B we have all 3, but we will lose the parity disk, right? No issue there. If you take C, so C2 will be gone, but since we have the parity disk, we can recover this C2, this part, right? Then D also same, parity is here, so you can recover this part. So parity, so the parity is distributed to all the disks like this, right? So if one disk fails, only one parity will be gone, right? The others will be distributed, so no issue. But if like 2 hard disks fail, then it will be difficult to recover. Actually, cannot recover, right? So RAID 5 only supports recovery up to 1 hard disk failure, right? And then we have another. If you take this RAID, we can have a hot spare also, right? Let's say we are putting these 4 disks for the RAID 5, and then if we have another disk, we can include it as a hot spare, right? So when one of these disks fail, let's say disk 3, right, then the hot spare will be activated, and then whatever was on this failed disk will be recreated on the new disk automatically, right? So until you replace the failed disk, this will recover automatically to the hot spare, and then you can replace the disk on your. So it's better to replace as soon as possible, but until you replace, it will be recreated on that hot spare, right? If you don't have a hot spare, then until you put the disk, you cannot use any of this, right? You can understand, right? Because a part of it is missing, and even to recreate, it cannot. Where to recreate? There is no disk available until you plug in a new disk. So there's thing called the hot spare, where you can allocate one as a spare disk, right? So it will be offline until one of the disks fail, right? So that is RAID 5, and with the hot spare you can automatically recover. Yeah, so these are the various technologies given here. Okay, so this stripping is used to increase the speed or access speed, and mirroring is used to have a backup, right? So in RAID 10 we combine those two, mirroring and stripping. So usually RAID 1 you can have only 2 disks only, right? So there's a limitation. So if you want to go like 4 disks, then you have to use RAID 10, right? So because RAID 1 supports only maximum 2 disks. So if you want to go more, then you can use stripping plus mirroring RAID 10, right? This number of disks can increase.
Okay, so that is RAID. So okay, this it's RAID controller. So it's a card, or it can be on board the server motherboard. So the thing about this RAID is, because I have practical experience, right, using this RAID. So if this RAID, let's say, okay, if a hard disk fails and you have like RAID 5 or 10, then recovery is there, right? So and if you have a hot spare, then automatic recovery is there until you replace the hard disk. But what happens if the RAID card fails or controller? So that is also an issue, right? If the card or controller fails, let's say the RAID card fails, right? So then you will have to replace with a new card, right? Now this RAID details are also stored in the card. So when you replace a new card, those details will not be there, right? But usually those details can be recovered from the hard disk, the RAID array as well. So when you put in a new RAID card, so whatever the details which were in the old card, those details can be recovered from the RAID array or the disks as well. But the thing is, you will have to use the same type or model of the RAID card, right? Because the technology or how RAID works will be different from vendors, right? So, and models also, models of RAID cards, it will be different how the RAID is implemented. So usually you have to use the same card and model, right? Then you will have no problem. But if you want to change that, then you will have an issue, right? Or let's say, for example, yeah, the server, let's say the server motherboard, something happens and it's not working, or maybe it's damaged, maybe capacitors have gone, or right? Then what to do? So if you put those hard disks in a new server or new motherboard, then you cannot recover, right? You have to have the same controller or card or motherboard. So that issue is there. So this happened actually in the university, right? In one of the main domain server, this happened, right? So the motherboard was gone, and then we replaced the same motherboard, right? But it was a very old server, right? And so some capacitors had blown, right? It's a very old server. I think IBM server. So we got a new motherboard, and it's expensive, right? Getting a new server board, because the whole motherboard is very costly, right? So we got a new motherboard anyways, because we needed the data and everything, right? So it was costly, but we got one. But then so actually it's an old kind of server, right? So you don't have new manufactured motherboards. Those are actually, so what we got as a replacement also, those are old ones, right? Because it's not manufactured then. So that was working for maybe a month or two, and then again the same thing happened. The capacitors blew off the new one, and then we came to a point where replacing the motherboard again, it's useless because of the cost and all that. And then the data, of course, we couldn't recover, right? So that issue is there when using RAID, right? So when you are using some kind of technology, you have to know all these things, right? Otherwise you will be in trouble. Now those data was not that critical, and even if we lose, it was just mainly some data of student files and so on, right? So we have asked students to have backups of files. So anyway, we couldn't recover those files. But if it were critical data, then there would be an issue, right? Then maybe we will have to buy the same motherboard again, replace, and maybe get the data. So anyway, so those are some limitations of this, right? So if you have a backup somewhere in maybe the cloud, or maybe another disk array or something, then this sort of issue we can avoid. Okay, anyway, so those are some things about these RAID controllers, right?
Sir,
Yes.
සර් දැන් එතකොට sorry කිව්වේ සර් එතකොට දැන් අර අපි රේට් ටෙක්නොලොජි එක පාවිච්චි කරලා අපි hard disk හදනවානේ
Oh.
ඊට පස්සේ දැන් එතනදී මැෂින් එකේ තියෙන ඒ hard මේ motherboard එක තමයි motherboard එක ගියොත් එහෙම ඊට පස්සේ ඒ තියෙන අර මේ hard disk වල තියෙන ඒවා backup කරන්න බෑ කියලාද කිව්වේ?
ඔව් hard disk එක read කරන්න පුළුවන් ඒ control එකට විතරයි. මොකද ඒ control එක තමයි දන්නේ කොහොමද ලියලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. වෙන මාරු කරපු හැටි ඒව දන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් reset කරලා ගන්න වෙන්නේ ඔක්කොම clear කරලා ගන්න වෙන්නේ.
ඒ කියන්නේ
recover කරන්න බෑ.
මේ අර දාන රේඩ් මේ ටෙක්නොලොජි එකේ යූස් කරන සර්කිට් එක එකින් එකට වෙනස් වෙනවා එහෙම.
ඔව් models වෙනස් වෙනවා, vendors වෙනස් වෙනවා, RAID cards වෙනස් වෙනවා. එතකොට ඒවා වෙනස් වුණාම recover කරන්න බෑ වෙන එකක තියෙන එක.
හරි සර්.
Okay, so these are the main things which will be there in the server, right? Then we go to the work group and the domain model. Now these are two types of models. Right. So domain, I told you earlier, domain environment. You can see here, all the clients are connected to a central point, right? Controlled by a central point. Work group, you can see it's individual, right? there is no central connection. Everything works individually, the computers, right? So that is the main difference between these two. Work group is normal what you have, like, you know, your home computer or laptop. We can call that as a work group. If you check the settings of your computer or laptop by pressing Windows and pause, you can get the system menu, right? Windows and pause key, you can get the system menu. That's a shortcut. So if you don't have a pause key, then you have to go to the control panel and get that. So let me so if you get the Windows pause directly, let me show you an image of what you will get. You can see the work group name. So just press Windows and pause, and in the window you can directly see the details. Okay, let me show you a window of what that looks like. So Windows pause will bring you up this dialog, right? System properties. Here, can you see thing called work group? So default, it will be work group, but you can change it to any name, right? At the bottom, you have a button here, change. So you can click that, and the work group, you can give any name, right? So let's say at your home, you have maybe a laptop and a computer connected to the same network. So you can name your both work group as maybe something like home or home network or something, right? Then if you name both your, let's say, computer and laptop, then they will be in the same work group. So then you can you know, share, you know, files, and when you are in the same work group, it's easy to share files and things between those two computers, right? So work group is like a small grouping. It's like a small group, but each computer or laptop is working independently, right? Not managed by a central computer server or something, right? Not managed by a central point, but um, individually managed devices, right? That is a work group. It's a small group, but managed individually. Like now, you have to one by one go to every machine and change the work group name, right? If you take the domain environment, you don't have to go one by one and do that, right? Um, uh, actually, yeah, the very first time you have to, when you join the domain, you have to add it to the domain. But after that, all the computers will be managed by one server, domain server. We call the domain server, right? Now, if you see this work group name, that means this computer is a standalone computer which is not connected to a domain, right? And when you log in, the local accounts or the user accounts which are in the computer or laptop will be used, right? Now, when you're in the domain, yeah, so Windows 7, we will, if you get the properties, you will see a page like this where the work group is also there, right? when you're in a domain, okay, so when you click the this change button here, you will get a window like this, computer name or domain, right? So you can give your computer name, and then down here you can select whether this computer is a part of a work group or part of a domain. So when you add it to a domain, then it will be controlled centrally by a server, domain server, right? So first you have to have a domain server to add it to a domain. So yeah, so I cannot find any examples where it has been added to a domain, but yeah, so all our work groups. Yes, okay, anyway, so so now you get the difference between, right? So work group, so each are individual machines, right? Managed individually. There's no central management. So if two computers or devices belong to the same work group, you can easily share files or printers or whatever, right, between the same work group. If it is different, then you have to change some security settings and so on. But if you are in the same work group, then it is much easier to share files, things and settings and so on through the network. Now when you're going to the domain, right, okay, so I said in a work group model, okay, let's say we have a no, we have a user account called student in this. In yeah, let's name this. Okay, this is computer 1 and 2, right? This one has a user account called student, right? So it's a local account. Local means it's created, this student user account is created in this computer, right? So that means we have to log in to this computer 1 with the administrator and then create the student account, which will be a user account, normal user account, right? Right. Now then, so if you, okay, let's say we created a student account here also. Computer 2, right? So now you log in here. So this is a local account, right? And then so to log in using the same username in this computer 2, it should be created, the student account should be created locally. So you have to log in with administrator and create the student account. So maybe you can use the same password or maybe two different passwords, right? Let's say, but it doesn't have to have the same password because it's done, two are separate. So I will, to show you it is, okay. to show you that these two are different, I will put like this, right? Okay, now student username you have created in both these two computers, but two passwords, right? So you can understand that those are related to only that computer, right? So this student is only related to this computer one and the password. So the second computer username and password is related to only computer two, right? If you use this 1, 2, 3 in this computer, it will not work, right? In computer 2, 1, 2, 3 will not work. In computer 1, 4, 5, 6 will not work, right? Two separate and individual, only local. Local means local. Local means individual to the computer, right? You can have the same password also, no issue, right? You can have 1, 2, 3 in computer 2 also, right? But to make you understand this concept of this being individual, so I use two passwords, right? Right. So the username also you can put student 1, student 2, something, right? And yeah, so it is different in both computers, not the same account. Now, okay, in the domain, right? So these are the same like these computers, but the difference is they are managed, they are in a domain environment and managed centrally. Right? Okay, now, so, okay, when you log into this 1 and 2, when you log into this 1 and 2, so there should be user accounts created. You have to manually go and create in each of these computers whatever the user accounts needed, right? Now here you don't have to, when it's in the domain, you don't have to manually go to each and every machine and create these accounts, right? So you create an account in the server. So
excuse me sir.
yes,
සර් එතකොට ඔය ඇක්ටිව් ඩිරෙක්ටරි දානවා කියන්නේ අනිවාර්යෙන් එතකොට ඩොමේන් මොඩල් එකක් වෙන්නම ඕනේ නේද?
active directory කියන domain model එක තමයි. මේ active directory එකට තමයි දාන්නේ.
මේ ඒ වගේ එක නිසා අනිවාර්යෙන් ඩොමේන් මොඩල් එකක් වෙන්නම ඕනේ නේද?
ඔව් domain model එකක් කියනවා. active directory ඉන්නේ domain එක විතරයි. ඒවා නිකන් එන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ server OS එකක් දාන්න ඕනේ. It has to be a server OS, right? Usually what you are installing in your computers is, let's say, Windows 7 Professional or Windows 10 Professional Pro or Home or whatever, right? Windows 7 Home or those are client OS, right? Not server OS. So when you come to this domain server environment, you have to install a server OS, right? 2003 server, 2008 server, 2012 server, then you have 2016. So server, right? Windows server, you have to install a Windows server OS where you have an active directory, right? Now those tools does not come in the other normal OS what you have, right? So and so server OS is also expensive, and it's different how you pay for the server OS, right? Sometimes maybe you have to pay for the number of clients which will be joining the server, let's say domain server, if you are planning on a domain server. So you might have to pay for the number of clients or like that. There are different payment methods for the license, right? Okay, so here I will just to show you that it's a different one. I will put a different password. Now I have created this username and password in the domain server, right? So student, and I have put the password as 789. Now you can use this username and now you don't have to go to each of these client machine and create like this a local account, right? These are in the domain. This username and password can be used in any of the client machines which are connected to the domain, right? So central management. Let's say for some reason, okay, let's say you want to change the password. Now you have given this username and passwords to a, let's say, limited class or limited number of students. But let's say now they have given it to some outsiders, right? Now outsiders are also using this account to log in. Now if we are using this domain model, we can easily change the password, or we can if you don't want to, we can deactivate this account, right? We can disable this account in the server, then no one will be able to use this login in any of the computers, right? Now what will happen if we use this method? Right now, so to change the password in this method, we have to go to each and every machine and manually change in each computer, right? Very difficult to manage, and we cannot disable also. We have to go to one by one and do that, right? So when we have the domain model, it is very easy to manage from the server, right? And yeah, so that is one thing. And another thing is, say, I think I don't know whether you have been given accounts in your university, but usually in where I work, Morato University, of course, we give our students a separate account, right? For their the username will be their index number, right? So each student will have a separate username and password, right? So they are not supposed to share with others. So anything they do with their account will be their responsibility, right? Now, having common accounts like this, it's a problem, right? So we don't know who logged in, and if someone logs in and does something in one of the computers, we don't know who did it, right? But when we give them separate accounts, so we can find out if they have done some mischievous work in the computers. We can identify the person, right? Now if someone has shared their username and password with someone, then it's their problem, right? Because when we give students accounts, we ask them not to share, right? So anything done with their accounts will be their responsibility, right? Now when we have common accounts, we cannot do that, right? So usually the best thing is to give individual accounts to students, right? This is what I mean in a university environment. Even in, let's say, a private company, right? There also, if the domain environment is there, then the employee will be given a separate username and password, right? So using that username and password, restricted access can be given so that that user can only maybe log into maybe some computers like that, right? So then using this server, we can put policies, rules, right? So then it will apply to all the domain computers which are there, right? So automatically it will push all the security policies to all these client computers. So it is very easy, right? Yeah, and then if you're talking about, okay, I will just mention a little bit about this. We will talk about this later, right? Active Directory, there's a thing called the Active Directory, which is there in the server, right? So it has the, usernames and passwords and then policies, right? Those things are there, right? It's like a list. It's like a directory, which, the username, password, and also these computers are also here, right? So this 11, 12, it's also in the Active Directory. You can separately group them, right? Maybe you can, group these two together in one group, and then maybe apply separately policies to these two only, right? Like that, you can do grouping, right? So some users you can group. If I say, for example, in a private company, you can maybe, put finance people, department people to one group, finance group, and then let's say HR to another group, right? Then apply different rules and policies and manage. So it's very easy, right? So when they leave, let's say when they leave the company, we remove the whatever their user accounts, right? Disable or remove, delete. So they will not be able to access after that, right? Or maybe we can give it to another person, maybe the new person coming in, right? So yeah, so those rules can be different from organizations, right? So okay, that is basically this domain server and the Active Directory, right? So now you can see it's very easy to manage, but okay, there is also okay, that's the advantage. But now since all these need the domain server to log in, what happens if for some reason this is not working or goes down, or let's say the network connectivity is gone for some reason, right? A switch is down, or anything can happen, right? Or maybe one of these cables not working, right? So then you will not be able to log in or use this, right? If the domain server goes down, you cannot log in from any of the client, right? So for that, we can have backup domain controllers, right? So if one fails, then the other will take over. So redundancy. So because this is what we call a central point of failure, right? When we connect them to one place, centrally managed. So when that central point goes down, all will go down, right? So we have to have redundancy, otherwise it will be a central point of failure, right? Because none of the computers, no one can use if this central point goes down. So here work group, you don't have that issue, separate. So there's no central point of failure. If one is not working, you can go and use another computer, right? No issue. So you have to have local accounts created to use them, right? That is the difference. Okay, that's the work group and the domain model. So any questions from that? I think I explained clear. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, so the work group is a collection of computers on a LAN, local area network, share common resources and responsibilities. Work groups provide easy sharing of files printers. Just as I said, if you are in the same work group, you can easily share files. Windows allows that, right? Because starting from I think Windows 7, the sharing and everything. I think XP also it was there. Sharing, files and printers in work groups has been very easy, right? It's been made so that home users can use it for sharing and things like that. The domain, of course, you have to have some kind of knowledge, right, to manage a domain. Because when you add to a domain, then it's a separate set of rules and security and uh, like that, right? So now when you are connected to a domain, there's encryption and things like that, right? Because you are typing your username and password in the client, and it goes through the network to the domain server, right? Now, if anyone captures that packet and then if they can read the username and password, then there will be an issue, right? So there should be because you are passing your username and password to the server, right? Here, when you are typing your username and password, say student789, right? You have to send it to the server. Then the server will check and uh, reply saying okay, right? So you are sending through the network. Here in the work group model, it's local password. You are not sending outside. It's inside the computer because it's local, right? Local logins. So there you don't have any security issue, but here you have. When you send through the network, anyone in the network, if they access that packet with the username and password, if they read it, then you are in trouble, right? So you have to encrypt that username and password so that no one will be able to read, right? So that a lot of security should be there in this case, right? Otherwise, someone else might be able to, uh, you know, if they capture a packet, then they can send it to the server and say, okay, I am this user, and then mischievously they can log in, right? So there's a lot of security involved here to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, domain can refer to either to a local subnet. Okay, there's a description here. In a work group, no computer has control over another computer, right? It's individual. They can't control any other computers. They are on their own, right? Each computer has a set of user account. To use any computer in the work group, you must have an account on that computer. So you must have an account on that computer. That means local. You must have a local account, which you know the username and password to use that computer, right? No more than 10 to 20 computers, right? So because if you have a lot of work group computers, then it's difficult to manage. So most probably this will be a small group, right? Must be on the same local network or subnet. So yeah, so they only work if their IP address are in the same range, right? If they are different, then of course it will be a different work group, right? So work groups work in the same local network, or we call the subnet. Okay, in the domain, so one or more computers or servers. Yeah. So as I said, there can be one domain server, or there can be 2, 3, 4, like that. You can have redundancy, right? Or backup domain servers. So network administrators use servers to control the security and permission for all the computers in the domain. So servers are handled by network administrators or system administrators, right? And they, as I said, using the Active Directory, they give the group according to the correct um, method, and then they put security and whatever needed, right? Permissions for all computers in domain. So it will be whatever the settings applied will be going to the all the client computers in the domain. Let's say, for example, a lab, computer lab in the university, right? So if you add it to a domain, whatever security you put in the server will be pushed to all the computers. So as I said, let's say you put a common username and password for, for some reason. So you can change the password anytime, and it will apply to all the computers because it's central, right? Right. So if you have a user account at the domain, you can log on to any computer in the domain without needing an account on that computer. Right. So if you have a computer in the server and or in any client computer, you can log in. Right. Okay. So that is usually the domain environment. Okay. So yeah. So that is work group and domain. So we will stop for today. Right. Okay. So the next we will do on Friday, right? Friday morning. Okay. So do you have any questions you need to ask on what we did today?